Okay, welcome everyone to the IMAA's Insights and Innovation Sessions. Our next session is by the wonderful team at ACAST. Not only they're wonderful partners at the IMAA, they also support us in many ways, whether it be the scavenger hunt or whenever they kind of, they put their hand up, they always help. Furthermore, I would like to say that I've had the pleasure of being in their studios, and we've done a bunch of webinars. So these guys are key partners as well of our academy, and we've done our webinars, our podcasts within there. So when you go through the academy and you hear the podcast, it's coming from the ACAST studios, where they're coming from today. They've just been revamped. They have, it's located kind of next to Surrey Hills where that big fire was. And I was just hearing that that Henrik's car has potentially been written off, exploded even. I'm just trying to think about the insurance case for you. It's a total write-off. So, it's their first day back in their new studios. They're going to talk about all things podcast, what's happening in the podcast space, some of the new tech available, and what's happening. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the guys, Henrik and Kieran. Henrik, over to you to take things over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. Happy Monday, everyone. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Henrik Isaacson, and I'm the Managing Director here at ACAST in Australia and New Zealand. If you think I've got a funny accent, you're absolutely right. I'm half Swedish, I'm half Finnish, and I've lived in Australia for almost 10 years. Prior to working at ACAST, I held positions at Spotify, Amobi, and a couple of other businesses. I'm a huge believer and fan of audio, big fan of podcasts. So if you ever need any podcast recommendations, please don't hesitate to get in touch.
And I'm Kieran, so I'm the Key Account Director that looks after all independent agencies in Australia. I also have a weird accent. I am from Ireland, lived in America, and I've lived in Australia now for almost 20 years. I don't think that was really part of our introduction, that we have weird accents, but here you go. But no, we're super excited to be here today and chat to you guys about all the amazing things that are happening in the podcasting space, and how we at ACAST are at the forefront of it. So without further ado, let's kick off.
So the question we sort of asked ourselves when we put together this webinar is centered around a number of different things, but mainly around the sort of the myth that we have hit peak podcasting in Australia. We're seeing enormous growth across ACAST and the ACAST marketplace, which we'll show you in a bit. And sort of the long and short of it is no, we have not hit peak podcasting. We're seeing more and more podcasters signing up to our creator network on a weekly basis. We now have more than 100,000 shows on ACAST globally, of which Australia makes up for a really large chunk. But really, if you look at the growth across our business and independent agencies, we've seen a 25% year-on-year growth in ad spend coming from indies, which we think is phenomenal and which we're really grateful for. And I think this comes down to a number of different things. Obviously, all the hard work that Kieran and his team puts in, but also the fact that you guys are putting faith in our technology and in our solutions that we put forward. And I think in everything that's going on with the economic sort of outlook as well, I think it's a fairly good result. So we're very thankful for this, and thank you for putting trust in ACAST. When we talk about podcasting, there's been a lot of talk about the attention economy. We know that podcasting yields high engagement, it yields super high attention and high trust communities. And we see this day in and day out when we talk to our independent creators, when we hear stories about how they talk about their followers, their listeners, be that on the podcast or on social media like Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok. So the question, though, is why isn't podcasting on the plans of more indie agencies? And that's sort of why we're here today, to help you with. So when we did the survey last year, or when IMA did the survey last year, the three key concerns, or should I say barriers of growth, were scale in podcasting. There isn't enough scale in podcasting. The second one is measurement. Podcasting measurement is hard, or effectiveness of podcast measurement is hard to understand. And the third one is obviously ROI. So these are the things that we're going to touch on today. The presentation shouldn't take more than 25 minutes. We'll take questions at the end, as many as you'd like. And if you have any questions or might come up with something later on, feel free to reach out to us here at ACAST. If you look at podcasting and listenership in Australia, the curve is really, really positive. So podcast consumption has gone up by 48% since 2021. And this is sort of in line with our forecast and our expectation. And it's really good to see this come to life. And by 2026, we're expecting 11.5 million Australians listening to a podcast on a monthly basis, which is absolutely astonishing. The fun fact here as well is that Australia has actually overtaken the US in podcast consumption, which I don't think anyone could guess only 6 months ago. People listen to more podcasts as well. So if you look at the research that the CRA did with the Infinite Dial, podcast listeners now spend 7 hours a week listening to their favorite podcast or news or whatever that might be. And that's more than music streaming and online radio. And if you compare that to 2021, it's obviously an increase about 2 hours. So yeah, there's plenty of consumption going on. And let's just say that it is COVID proof. We have seen no slowdown in new podcasts signing up to ACAST post the pandemic. There was obviously a surge during the pandemic because people were sitting at home doing this sort of stuff. But we haven't seen a slowdown in terms of the time spent listening to their favorite podcast across the whole network. So that's very encouraging as well from an advertising perspective. So yeah, we are ACAST, and that's sort of what we're here to talk to you about today. We've been told not to sell you anything, so we won't sell you anything. We're going to give you a view of the podcasting landscape as it sits. In terms of ACAST, there's a lot of noise in podcasting at the moment. The Spotifys of the world, the radio networks in Australia have all gone all in on podcasting. And you've even seen the reports from some of the larger traditional radio companies saying that audio on demand and podcasting now makes up for a significant part of their revenue line. But there's a couple of truths that we want to sort of bring across. First of all, ACAST is the biggest podcast network in Australia. We have almost 100,000 podcasts in Australia, globally. And we've got somewhere around the realm of 26 to 28 million downloads a month. The difference between the ACAST business model and I would say pretty much everyone else is we work to build a thriving creator economy. And by that, I mean every dollar that goes into the ACAST marketplace and the ACAST creator network gets split with a content creator, be that super small or really big like the BBC or the Guardian. We also support an open podcast ecosystem, and this has been something that's, we haven't really deviated from this strategy since the launch in 2015. We believe that podcasts and audio should be available on every platform, regardless of where you listen to it. And this is obviously where our strategy and our ethos deviates from the likes of Spotify and the radio networks. And we're also innovators in this space. So we invented what's called dynamic ad insertion. We were the first. And since then, we've launched a number of different targeting options and technology sort of enhancements in podcasting that Kieran will touch on in a bit. Podcasting is no longer just a host read or a sponsorship in a podcast. There's so much more that we can do, and we'll touch on that in a sec. And yeah, with that, look, I'll hand over to Kieran. But yeah, if you have any questions to myself or the team, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll take questions in the end.
Thank you, Henrik. As kind of Henrik touched on, there's a lot of players in the game now, and a lot of companies are investing into their podcast strategy. So as you can see here, though, ACAST is still the largest #1 podcast company in Australia. So this is based on the April 2023 Triton Ranker numbers. So we still have about 31% share of the market. As you can see on the graph there, Listener and iHeart are very close behind us. We know that they're investing a lot in signing new content and some really great content at that. But last year, Aussie podcast hit 760 million downloads, and we were still at the forefront of that with over 26 million monthly listens. So I guess what we want to get out of this presentation is we're going to be here to debunk those 3 myths that we discussed earlier, but we also want you to, when you think podcasting, we want you to think of ACAST. So in terms of our content, we kind of have a two-pronged approach in what's in our portfolio. So we are the exclusive monetization partner for all the premium publishers. So the likes of The Guardian, The Economist, the BBC, etc. So no other publisher can sell their inventory except ACAST. And then we also work with some of the world's biggest independent creators. So some of the ones you see on the screen there are probably some of our bigger Australian podcasts, so the likes of Better Than Yesterday with Osher Ginsberg, Equity Mates, Loose Units, etc. I think what's really great about the independent creators and the independent agencies is we're ACAST, we support independent creators and we want to support independent agencies as well. So it's a really great mix and a really great fit for your clients. So in terms of the content, as H mentioned, we have been signing a lot of great content over the past 6 to 12 months. And these are some of the highlights. So with the likes of Alpha Blokes is one of the biggest podcasts in Australia, week on week on the Apple, on the Spotify charts. It's a podcast started by two blokes, Tommy and Cam. They were minors, or they still are minors, and they started this podcast to just kind of give their colleagues and other people that work in similar situations just a friend in the ear and give them some company when they're doing long haul shifts. And it has just skyrocketed. And so they're doing almost 900,000 monthly listens, and their socials are huge as well. And what a trend we're kind of seeing recently is we're seeing a lot of the kind of influencers and social people that have a strong social media following moving into the podcasting space, but they're also bringing all their followers with them. So next we have We Mean Well, and this podcast is hilarious. It's actually number 2 on the Spotify comedy podcast charts at the moment. But they have about 320 monthly listens. It's by Jack Archdale and Louisa. They're just two friends, two TikTokers, and they just chat about all different types of topics. It's hilarious. Definitely tune in. We also just signed Basically Besties. So this is a TikTok duo, mother and daughter. So Letitia and Kat, and they are so close that they talk about everything with each other. So they're basically besties. It's a really great podcast for the women's lifestyle area, and they have a huge social following. So all the socials you see on the screen here are the podcast socials, and yeah, their actual individual socials are even bigger. Like I think Letitia Clark has about 4 million TikTok followers. And then lastly, we have We Got the Chocolates. This is a great podcast started by Lee and Mitch, two brothers and their friends, and they just tell everything from dad jokes, play fun games, make each other do hilarious pranks. It's really great, really easy listening to, and their socials, as you can see there, are almost 2 million, and that's just their podcast socials as well. So what's important to note about these is we're signing some really great content, but we're really kind of getting that younger Gen Z millennial audience. But by having this a huge social presence, advertisers are also able to tap into that kind of post the podcast. So our new innovations. So as we said, there's been a lot going on in podcasting at the moment. We just talked about scale, how there is still a huge amount of scale in podcasting, especially with ACAST being the #1 podcast company. And now we want to talk about measurement and some of the other innovations and technologies that we're seeing in podcasting, and especially with ACAST at the moment. So the first one we want to talk about is measurement. We know measurement was a key kind of concern or barrier for a lot of independent agencies in last year's survey. But now we work with many third-party measurement companies to measure attribution and brand uplift. So we partner with the likes of Podsights and ArtSide to measure attribution. You can measure website traffic, etc. And that's obviously a great opportunity for clients to push listeners and users to the website. And it's quite palatable. It's only a $2.70 increase on the CPM. We also work with a number of third-party measurement companies for brand uplift. So this is obviously all those brand metrics from recall, awareness, consideration. What's really great about this is the minimum investment is now $50K, minimum media investment to unlock a brand lift study. Before that, it was actually $100K. So we're trying to make it a lot more palatable for clients, but it's just a great way to show the effectiveness of a podcast campaign. So when you think measurement, there definitely is measurement in podcasting. Next, we have first-party data targeting. So this is our newest targeting capability that we introduced at the beginning of the year. And it's kind of a global media first, where we'll be able to use clients' first-party data and then use that across our portfolio and across our network to target your audience. At the moment, we are kind of working with some bigger clients that have a lot of data points to kind of get this off the ground. But I do have a case study from the US that's in the appendix, so you can have a look at that. But this is super exciting, and we're seeing obviously a lot of clients very interested in using their first-party data to then target their customers across different networks. Thirdly, we have our conversational keyword targeting. So we introduced conversational targeting at the back end of last year, and now we've kind of progressed to one stage more to include keyword targeting. So if you think of keyword targeting, it's the same as digital as it is in audio. We can find specific keywords within a podcast episode, and then we can run your advertisement right next to that conversation. So using AI technology, we'll transcribe all of the audio to text in real time, and then we'll run your ad within that podcast episode. So it's a super, super granular form of targeting.
And just to be clear on that too, it's a pretty nifty piece of tech, because we do transcribe every piece of content on ACAST that's being published by the minute. So we can send updated lists on, for instance, top conversations and top keywords in Australia, for instance, and then you can build a whole set of targeting options to either positively or negatively target a campaign. Also allows you to break out of the sort of context of the podcast. So just because you're selling a ute, for example, doesn't mean that you only have to target male podcasts or male lifestyle podcasts. Conversations about those sort of vehicles or products or brands, etc., happens in other podcasts too. It's definitely my favorite piece of tech at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing tons of clients getting on board. It's also great to couple this conversational keyword targeting with broader targeting as well, so you're reaching your audience at all various touch points. I think I looked at the top keywords over the last week, and family was number one, friend was number two, there was Australia, America, and hand. Randomly, hand is always in the top 5. I don't know why people are saying hand so much in podcasting, but there you have it. So if you have a jewelry brand, it could work really well. We also have ACAST Dynamics. So this is where we can create personalized ads based on numerous data variables. So I'll play an example here, and I'll probably explain it much better than I will, but have a listen. But this is just a great way to get really personal with your advertising and make it super relevant and bespoke to your audience.
It's dynamic, the lines change. Here's midday.
Strawberry shakes and midday breaks.
Here's the evening.
Sharebox and evening frocks.
And here's one for you. Here's the morning.
Hash browns in dressing gowns.
Oh, perfect.
And it uses weather as well. So we've got sunny,
Medium fries and sunny skies.
cloudy.
Cloudy skies.
For the rain outside, here's stormy as well.
Medium fries and stormy skies.
I'm actually loving it.
And it uses your device too. So here's Apple.
Download Uber Eats on the App Store and enjoy McDonald's at home.
And one for your Android phone.
Download Uber Eats on Google Play Store and enjoy McDonald's at home.
Do they deliver here? Let's have a look.
Now available in Lancaster.
No.
Liverpool.
Almost.
Now available in London.
Bingo.
Ooh, loving those stats.
Do you get it now?
I think I do. Should we get something?
So that's a campaign we did in the UK for Macca's, but as you can see, we used the weather, we use apps, we use geo, just to kind of change up the advertising and make it super relevant to that audience. So that's super exciting and very easy for us to do on our end. The next one is Podchaser acquisition. So Podchaser is essentially the IMDb for podcasts. It's a huge American company, which we acquired, and now we're partnering with them to kind of really advance our targeting capabilities across our network. So using the data from their website. So as you know, with like IMDb, you can find out pretty much everything about a movie. This is the same from a podcasting standpoint, but we could also find out stuff about their audience, the audience size, and all those kind of informations. And now what we're doing is using that data to advance our targeting capabilities across our network. And with that, we're seeing we can get more scale. With more scale allows clients to have less creative wear out. And hopefully in the future, we'll be able to kind of work this more into a measurement piece where we can find out the effectiveness and ROI with Podchaser. So this is still relatively new, but it's super exciting from an ACAST point of view. So those are all the new innovations in podcasting at the moment. We have a kind of one pager on each of these in the appendix, which we'll obviously send over. But moving on to how we can maximize ROI in podcasting. So as H mentioned, and I think we all know, in media, attention has been a huge buzzword over the past year. And this just kind of showcased that podcasts actually reign supreme in the attention economy. So based on the Kantar Global Equity Report, podcast ads were ranked #1 in terms of receptivity. In terms of attentiveness, it was stronger than TV, display, and video. And then in terms of return on ad spend, it was actually 60% higher return on investment than any other channel. So that last study you see there, return on ad spend, was a study we did, ACAST did in Sweden. It was done over 2 years. I believe 37 clients over 6 industry verticals and all different media channels to find out which one was the most effective. And podcasting came out on top. So when you're looking for ROI, we know that that's ROI in podcasting, and it does reign supreme in the attention economy.
The study was done between ACAST and Spotify, actually,
Spotify.
and Analect, through
Yes,
OMG.
Correct. But what we want to talk about as well is, in terms of ROI, we know that podcasting is great when you buy it solo, but it's also very complementary to other media channels when you include it part of a larger mix, because we know that podcasting really builds brand. So in terms of building, I guess, the brand presence, we know it increases by 34% when podcasts are added alongside a radio buy. And what we know as well from our Sound Smart report last year is that 65% of podcast listeners don't listen to commercial radio. So you're not only building your brand by 34%, but you're also really driving incremental reach when you're partnering podcasting with a radio buy. It also increased almost 20% when you add it to a larger media campaign. So anything from TV to digital to social. And that kind of brings me on to my next point. This is a super exciting study we actually just released not long ago. It was out of our ACAST intelligence team in the US, but it shows that podcasts are a marketing multiplier. Similar to the previous slide, it just shows the effectiveness of an advertising campaign is heightened by when you combine podcasts with all these different types of media. So what you can see there is, for example, 61% believe that their campaign was heightened by almost 40% when adding podcasts to a display-only campaign. So it's really the sweet spot is the 21% to the 40%. And you can see that they're all pretty much over 50% believe that their advertising campaign was more effective when they combined it with other channels. So that's really great to see. Obviously, we know that there's a lot of clients might be pretty kind of stuck on traditional channels or just kind of sticking to the channels that they know. But from this study, we can see that if they still want to align with these channels, you can also include podcasting as well, and it makes for a more effective campaign. And then we know that podcast advertising drives impact. So in terms of consumer action, we know that people search for a product, they considered buying it, they looked online, they talked to their friends, word of mouth. And as you can see there, that podcast came on top against all other audio channels like commercial radio, music streaming. Because when you listen to podcasts, you listen pretty much 90% listen by themselves. You listen with headphones. You kind of have that one-to-one relationship with the host. So when a host does endorse a brand or you do hear an audio ad in your favorite podcast, it's going to resonate with you a lot more and really drive consumer action. All right, and then we're going to talk a bit more about creating or flexing your creative muscles. So we've talked about scale, how there is scale in podcasting. We talked about measurement, and we talked about the fact of ROI. But then we also want to give you some inspiration of how you can bring your campaigns to life with ACAST. So firstly, we want to touch on our ACAST creative team. So our team are here to do everything from ideation to production, everything to get a campaign live. So what we do is scripting, audio production, mocks, etc., everything that you would assume from an audio company. But we also go one step further and we can do branded content. We can do live podcasts and shows, and we also amplify across our social. So even though we are an audio company and we pride ourselves in that, we do have other kind of formats that we can play outside of a podcast. So if you do have any brief that is looking for extra touch points in terms of how we can bring the campaign to life, think of ACAST. All right, now I'll play some fun ads for you guys. So 3D audio is huge in podcasting and just digital audio itself. And this is a great way to really bring to life your client's brand messaging, especially if it's a typically visual brand. It's great to bring it to life in the audio space. So what this means is you have that 3D full soundscape audio, and it's in your ears, and it really brings it to life. So instead of me still talking about it, I am going to play this example to give you an idea.
Hear that? That's the sound as you kayak through the fjords of Doubtful Sound, where locals wait to welcome you. This is the sound of your next adventure. This is New Zealand, a land of spectacular landscapes where one journey leads to another, a place where you arrive as a visitor and leave as whānau. That means family. To plan your adventure, visit newzealand.com. Ka kite. See you soon.
So as you can hear with that, all the kind of the oar going in the water and all that beautiful sounds was 3D. If you guys are listening and not with headphones, it probably didn't sound as good because that's where you kind of get the full effect of what you are listening with headphones. And as I mentioned before, 90% of podcast listeners do listen with headphones. So these ads do resonate. 48% claim they actually pay more attention to 3D audio ads than standard ads. And then 3D ads actually increase long-term memory encoding by 60% when you compare it to standard stereo or radio ads. So we know it is super effective. And as I mentioned, it kind of really brings to life your brand messaging, especially if it's a typically visual brand. What do we have next? Oh, yes, my favorite host read. So obviously host reads are our bread and butter in podcasting and here at ACAST. So that's obviously the read done by the host endorsing a brand. But what we will show you today is this one done by Adam Buxton. The Adam Buxton podcast is a huge ACAST podcast in the UK. It does really solid numbers here as well. But he's probably the king of amazing host reads. So let me play this one for you to have a listen because it's really great.
The other day, I was enjoying the peace of a quiet train carriage when a young couple entered. It soon became clear they were engaged in a furious altercation.
Don't lie to me! I saw the text you sent her! Moderate your tone, Jocelyn. We're in a public carriage. You're a liar and a cheat, and you put your hands on me during I'm a celebrity. No such thing. You are embarrassing yourself. You were texting her right in front of me! I was voting for Amir to do the Bush Tucker trial, as you well know. Well, if you were voting, why were you smiling and laughing at the phone while you were doing it? Lost your mind, woman. I was smiling and laughing at one of Anton Deck's very amusing links. Liar! You're a liar! You're the liar!
From my bag, I retrieved my Bose QC35-2 noise-cancelling headphones. By the time they were sat comfortably upon my head, they had already paired with my device using the Bluetooth. Even before my chosen jam kicked in, the demented shrieks of the young lovers had been cleverly dampened to the point of inaudibility with Bose noise-cancelling technology. I hit play, and as the last of the hubbub receded, I was immersed in a world of beautiful music and intensely meaningful communication. Bose, get closer, I thought, and this is what I heard.
So obviously that's just a great example of how a host can really bring your messaging to life in their own way that really resonates with their audience, but also is kind of integrates really well into the content of their podcast. So what we like to say to clients is avoid scripting. You really want to embrace storytelling. Podcasting is a medium that's all about storytelling. We'll tailor it to the listener and keep it simple. So obviously Adam Buxton is amazing at this, but he kind of did this all himself. And I think it works really great for promoting Bose headphones. Also, we know host reads are really effective. So their brand recall rate is at 71%, and people are more likely to buy a product and service after hearing a host read. And lastly, I want to share this video with you guys. So this is a campaign that we did in the UK for Klarna. As I mentioned with ACAST Creative, we'll do all your audio production, but this just kind of showcases how we can go above and beyond and go beyond the podcast to really bring the campaign to life. So I'll play this for you now.
In Britain, it's always been considered a bit rude to talk about money. But our good manners aren't as good as they seem. Talking about personal finances is important for our well-being and stops us feeling too awkward and ashamed to seek help when we need it. To break the stigma, Klarna and ACAST made Money Talks, A card game with 50 carefully crafted questions to ease people into open chats about shopping, spending, and saving. Whether they're on a date, having dinner with a friend, or recording a podcast. From icebreakers to more personal questions, working up to the real good stuff. In what way has your upbringing influenced your spending habits? There are even fun wildcard exercises to help players bond with each other. Some of the most popular ACAST creators played Money Talks in sponsor reads and full-length episode takeovers of their podcast.
If your relationship with money were a film, what would it be called?
Gone in 6 seconds.
Resulting in laughter.
So you just decided to go the tight route then, Will, yeah? That's the path you're walking.
Get your own drinks.
Honesty.
Money doesn't always make you happy, and like showing it off and having all these expensive things, like it's not the be all and end all.
Yeah.
And great advice.
Think about what's important to you. And if it's not going to be value for you, then don't buy it.
Best of all, it kick-started a conversation beyond audio, with people sharing their favourite questions all over social, and over 17,000 on a waitlist to claim a pack of cards. The demand for the Money Talks game played by podcasters was so huge it now lives permanently on the Klarna app, proving that with a little help, talking about money can feel rather good.
So yeah, that just kind of showcases how we can go above and beyond with podcasting. It's a great example to just showcase how it's such a simple idea to create a game to get conversations going.
And a cheap way to do it too.
And a cheap way, yeah, very effective. And it just got so big that it now lives on the Klarna website where people can play whenever they want. And they've just really got some great integration to podcasts that will just live on the podcasters RSI feed forever. So that is pretty much all we have for you today.
It's been great, isn't it?
Again.
It's always where you get
rid of
messages
it.
across.
In Britain, it's always been considered a bit rude to talk about money.
There we go.
But our good manners.
But that's kind of everything we want to talk about today. And this last bit, it just gives you an idea
In
of some of
Britain,
the
it's always
amazing
been
campaigns that we could do. But the last 3 things we want to leave you with is why podcasting, why ACAST. And the reason is podcasting has grown almost 50% since 2021. And ACAST has the biggest scale in the market with 26 million monthly listeners. So when you think about scale and reach, you can think podcasting. There is measurement in podcasting, as I mentioned, with all the different brand lift partners we work with and attribution studies we've done. So when you think measurement, you can think podcasting. And podcasting is the #1 media channel that drives ROI and the #1 audio channel that drives consumer action. So when you do think ROI, you can think podcasting. And that is it from us. So thank you very much. If you guys do have any questions, you can, throw them in the chat. You can yell them out, whatever works for you guys.
We've been told there's hardly any questions. So if not, that's also fine.
Guys, are there any questions? And if there are, I can direct them to you guys separately. This will be recorded and can be found in our YouTube channel. Henrik and Kieran, thank you so much for your time and sharing that with the indies. I know the last few days, while suffering through a man flu from Cairns, and I've been listening to a couple of podcasts. I can remember every single ad, maybe because I'm obsessed with advertising. But thank you very much. Thank you. That was great. There's surveys, so just remember that the surveys are out. There's a News Corporation event on Wednesday night. If you're around for that, watch out for that. We've got deals coming up. We've got a Brisbane event coming up, and if anyone's interested in seeing the panel that we did up in Cairns, that's also on the YouTube channel as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a great week, and we will talk to everyone soon.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I do